First of all, I did miss your discussion on the insect world, but I was reminded of the mantra of one of the heroes of the 20th century, Muhammad Ali: float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I'm going to talk about two topics around not innovation itself, but policy for innovation, how we drive innovation in an economy for the benefit of the citizens of a country. And I'm going to start on the supply side and then move to the demand side. So when we come to supply, a lot of the discussion that goes on in these dialogues, even if it's not framed that way, is about where you put your investments. You have some resources. How do you spend them on research and on innovation? And of course, the words that always comes to mind is priorities. We were talking about Latin. It's the thing that comes first. What are you going to do first? And I'm sure many of you have experienced that the world of science doesn't really like priorities. If you ask the scientists themselves to give you priorities, they resist. They resist even more if you say to them, if you want to spend more on X, we're going to have to cut Y. Tell me what Y is. A Dutch colleague named this second group posteriorities, the things that you want to leave behind. Quite logical, I think. So, as a response to this, pretty well every country has come up with a list of technological priorities, and the rhetoric under these is that they will support national competitiveness, they will meet social goals, and so on. Now, the problem is, all of those lists are pretty much exactly the same. They all say biotechnology, information and communications technology, materials, perhaps blending into nanotechnology, and so on. And environment. So what does it mean if you have a priority as broad as this? A few years ago, I was helping the Japanese government produce its first basic plan for science and technology, and in that plan they had environment down as a priority for science. And when they went back at the end and asked themselves, did we actually make it a priority, they found that 60% of all the science they were doing in the country had managed to classify itself as being something to do with the environment. So it was no help at all in directing resources. Now, in European thinking, the kind of people who give out money for regions to develop actually have a lot more money than the people who give out money for research, have come up with a new concept, and this concept is called smart specialization. And the idea is they're not going to give you any money unless you come up with, in their minds, what a real priorities, not these generic ones. And real means that they are tailored to the real needs of the region or country that you're talking about. That's supposed to be the smart bit. So very likely they will fall within the broad headings that I mentioned before, and some other things as well. But they have to be taken down to a level of granularity where they are meaningful and make things actually different for the country that we're concerned with. And they don't have to be high research, they can be innovation of the kind that we were just discussing as well. Now, within this concept, not only do they define an objective of this kind, but also there's a certain process that must be followed. Again, you're not authorized to get these funds unless you've been through a process which they describe as entrepreneurial discovery. And what that means is having a great deal more engagement, particularly from the business community, in setting national priorities. Because in the end, a great part of innovation, even if it's for public service, is still driven by businesses. And mostly they tend to stay out of these dialogues, particularly smaller firms. For various reasons, I ended up being asked by the European Commission to be their the right word isn't very clear, but a kind of inspector advisor for Malta when it was developing its smart specialisation strategy. No, it wasn't actually. Actually, they found, well, indirectly, they found the fact that we had run an industry workshop on innovation policy 5 years before, and said, "This is what we want. Can you help them do more?" So with Jennifer and her colleagues, we did design one of these processes. We ran a whole series of consultations. First of all, with the public sector, analysing the strengths and weaknesses of the economy, and then a series of focus groups with I was probably in the end a majority of any firm that could be said to be engaged in innovation, a very wide range from large foreign FDIs through to small startups within the country. And one of the things that they're looking for in this are models of transformation. How do you actually change what you do? And there's a good list they have, which acts as a checklist that if you take a sector, you should take it on one of these four paths. You could transform it, modernize it, diversify it, or go into something radically new. And the last one, you have to be quite careful. So just to give examples to these words, in terms of transformation, mainly because of a favourable tax regime, Malta had attracted a lot of financial services activity, and following that, being a base for international web-based gambling. That's not something that anyone much liked, and it's considered to be extremely volatile. Somebody else creates a better legal environment, it all goes away again. So it's not something you can hang on to. So how do you build something more innovative into the economy? And what they alighted on was the idea that the same kind of skills, plus some ideas existing in the university, could be directed into digital gaming. Now, gaming here has nothing to do with gambling. It's constructing not only entertainment-type computer games, which is this huge industry in itself, but also gaming where you could model various situations in business and so on. And they managed to persuade a top-level team in a university in Denmark to relocate itself. Does that happen now, Jennifer? I think they've arrived. So there's a strategy going on. So that's transformation. Modernisation. There's a manufacturing sector which is a large part of the economy, but it's very much at the end of the pipeline, branch plant manufacturing, so making generic drugs, big assembly plant for a semiconductor firm. And there, the push from business was not to say specialise, it's too risky, because somebody could make a decision and you'd lose it. It was to say, let's improve the generic capability in smarter manufacturing techniques and share this across sectors. So it's a different angle on the strategy. Diversification. If you know anything about the history of the Maltese economy, you would know that its dominant industrial history was providing the shipyards for the British Navy in colonial days. This evolved into shipbuilding that essentially failed, but a lot of the capabilities there. There's now a ship repair business owned by an Italian company. But with all of these skills, some people have observed that Malta is an attractive destination for super yachts. A lot of the Roman Abramovich and people like this come there because it's a nice place to go in the summer. Valletta Harbour is very impressive. So the diversification strategy is to evolve the ship repair business towards the repair for super yachts. And you start to collect all the different capabilities together, including some quite advanced technological skills for the electronics and so on. That spills over also into aircraft maintenance. It's a sort of quite an air hub, and some of the skills are transferable there too. And then finally, strategy for radical transformation of the economy. That hasn't happened yet, but I think quite a few small countries are here. Well, small countries tend to know quite a lot about their populations. They're also often quite genetically consistent. So maybe there's good conditions there for doing genomic work and then setting up as a venue for clinical trials, for example, especially as there are particular genetic conditions that Mediterranean people have where you could gain through the study. And actually they're often shared with African populations as well, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, so on. So there's a strategy now, which, I mean, if you read the document, it's not at the same level of detail as I was speaking about, but these kind of details we use to persuade the funders that the country has got a grip on what it's doing. It's a dynamic picture. You can't just say, here is a strategy and we'll go on this way for the next 8 years. So the other thing we're trying to do is establish technology platforms, essentially public sector and business groupings in each of these sectors, who will remain a kind of dynamic group monitoring and adapting and dealing with the small country problem that things happen, things change. You've got to be flexible and be able to change direction when well, this is yes, it's a European concept, but it's essentially, I mean, in the European dimension, it's a business-led group in a sector who incubate ideas for research and innovation programs. They're involved in the early stages, bringing up the ideas which could then be formalised later. And it's somewhere between an incubator and a lobby, I would say, in this respect. The Maltese ones don't yet exist, so we can't say exactly what they do. It's in the plan for the coming. Yeah. So that's the supply side. The demand side, well, I've already spoke about this in Dar es Salaam, but just to recap, pretty much every country is limited in the resources it can budget for research and innovation, but they often neglect the fact that there are much bigger budgets in public procurement. Typically, at least in Europe, it's around 15 to 20% of GDP are spent on goods and services, not salaries through public procurement. For some emergent economies, the figure is higher. If you can divert even a small proportion of those resources towards the promotion of innovation, you have a powerful tool in your hands and a win-win tool. If you get it right, you can get better quality procurement by getting innovative goods which do the job better, and at the same time you have an instrument of stimulus for innovation capability within your country. My research team has been working for some years now on trying to address the barriers to doing this. Of course, if it was so easy, we'd all do it. The Americans do it very well, although they don't often label it as something that they're doing. So it's a hidden tool, but it's probably the most powerful tool of the American economy, particularly defense procurement, but also them spilling over, but also other things. But to do this, you have to overcome a number of barriers. I mean, first of all, you have to put in place the right framework conditions. Procurement is very much dependent on legislative structures for very good reasons. Otherwise, you fall into the territories of corruption or of litigation. So you have to have a strong legal framework to govern it. But within that framework, there are things you can do that make innovation possible. For example, you have to allow the person issuing the tender to put out what's called a functional specification. Now, that means instead of saying, I want to buy 100 buses of a certain engine capacity for my city transport system, you're able to say, I want to buy for my city a zero carbon transport solution, or something, whatever you want. So you define the end, not the means. And then you leave it to the innovative people out there to come in and propose you the means. So you open up a space in which innovation can happen. The next step, though, is that we often are short of capability of people involved in commissioning and procurement who understand innovation in the first place. So there's quite a training challenge, and a lot of training's going on in this country to try and push things that way, but it's something everyone shares. if you want an innovative solution, it often means not working with the same people who are already supplying you now. They're locked into their ways of doing things. So a further challenge is to find ways of opening things out, interesting different kinds of suppliers, maybe from different sectors, to come in and offer you something. And to do that, there's some tools that help. The word platform comes in again, but within that, running foresight exercises, workshops, saying, letting your suppliers know this is our roadmap. Over the next 5 to 10 years, this is the way we want to go with city transport or whatever it is. And then they can start formulating and making the necessary investments to come into it. And you have to broaden the field. The last thing you can do is try and incentivize it directly and deal with probably the biggest barrier. And the biggest barrier is risk aversion in the public sector. For very good reasons, public servants are less keen to take risks than the private sector. They can go into a number of reasons, but one of them, for example, is that the cycle of elections is often shorter than the cycle of getting benefits back on your innovation. So they might be in power doing all the disruptive part. When it comes to the election, people are complaining that all the roads are dug up or something, and somebody else comes later and gets the nice smooth new system. So you have to change the culture. Some countries try to do it with direct intervention. The Korean government, for example, runs an insurance scheme which basically insures you against the project going wrong. And China, they went down one road, which was trying to use innovation in equipment catalogues to drive innovative procurement. That didn't really work. We have a paper coming out on this. One of the reasons it didn't work is it ran into the ground on international regulation. It was essentially anti-competitive and was used as an instrument. But they have actually been one of the most successful countries also, but they also have the biggest failures. So maybe you see two things. So in new electric vehicles, every region has its own factory and type of electric vehicle. And what you get is this sort of internal competition and not allowing the best solution to rise to the top. So every country you look at, you can find lessons. But broadly speaking, I think the principles apply everywhere, but you have to tailor your thinking for the policy to your own particular circumstances. So I'll stop right now.
Before you go, Omar, you come here, not from there. This time. No, you come here. Before you go, your experience in policy and getting actually some funds justified in time for very big things which have got many spin-offs. Can you give one of the examples? Because you're not science advisor, Omar, but you have another trick. I don't know what you have. But you're very well known and probably just, well, I don't know where you speak, but could also just validate that. You're very well known that you have a particular way of picking up the right emergent development. The minister listens to you, the Secretary of Treasury or whatever listens to you, and you get the things done. How do you do that? Do you also help the science advisor or how? Or do you go straight?
Well,
how do you go about it?
Nowadays, because I'm a vice president of my university, my task is to show the opportunities that are coming from our university and our region. I mean, if in different capacities, I give neutral advice when I'm on an advisory committee. But I guess are you thinking about graphene? Yes, I was wondering if that was a real question. So how did we?
Why did you come there?
I mean, the reason it came there is because that's where the science is. The two Nobel Prize winners tried. Well, some of it has gone to Cambridge, and they're good people there as well. But but the core of the science, the absolute dominance, if you look at citations and everything else, is with our graphene team. And it's not only the 2 Nobel Prize winners, there are very many people around them, about 100 researchers now in graphene, which is the largest academic cluster in this topic. But it would still only have attracted regular science funding, doing well in grants and so on. And we sat down, a couple of us, and thought, this is not going to capture the benefits for the country. We're just going to do a lot of good science, and the benefits will all be flowing in Korea or Japan or US or somewhere else. So how can we go from this science base to create an innovation ecosystem? How do we sort of raise the levels? Well, what do you need? I mean, first of all, you need to move kind of up the levels towards innovation. And for this, we would need a clear strategy for working with business, both in attracting in large business partners and also in commercialization, developing intellectual property and helping startups. To do that, we would also need to be training a lot of people, because the main thing that attracts investment to an area is, in fact, it's the labour market. Whatever you hear about Silicon Valley, the only thing to remember about it is that it rests on its labour market. There are so many highly specialised trained people there that you know you can start your business, you know that if your business fails you can get another job, so therefore it's the safe place to be if you're innovating in that area. So how do you move from just what is just science in a lab towards creating a labour market? So we sketched out some elements of this ecosystem, and then our research funding system can't cope with big bets. It's just not designed to do that. It's designed to give out grants of £500,000, £1 million at a time, at best, with some occasional capital injections. So we had to go beyond it. So we went straight to the centre of government. We went to the Science Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Finance Minister, and we made the case that the country would seriously miss out, and we have a lot of backstories of other technologies we missed out on, LEDs and so on, unless we made critical investments now. Some other factors were helping us. The Conservative Party was having its annual conference in Manchester and wanted something nice to announce. It was at the height of austerity measures. They wanted to be seen that they were not only trying to control the deficit, but also investing in the future of the country. So we hit all of these buttons, and we were given, I mean, it was announced as 50 million, it was actually 38 million towards setting up the National Graphene Institute. We've since managed to double that investment by attracting European and money from business. And we've recently, Ivan Buckley probably told you, we've a Chinese partner has now come to join us to set up the European manufacturing operation, as well as a research partnership. And to my knowledge, they're the leading manufacturer of graphene. I mean, while everyone else is producing small flakes, they can produce it like cling film. So
wow.
So,
and the same with the high performance computer, right?
Strangely enough, the national funding model has now moved in that direction. We've had a number of initiatives which allow you to apply for big capital partnerships, but only if you can demonstrate business interest. So the main scheme, you had to show that you had double the money from business that government were giving you, and then the minimum government would give you was 10 million, so then you get very big projects. Yeah, so.